Good morning. Welcome to Social Media Breakfast. I think we're going to have a lot of people coming in. So when they come in, just give them a hard time. Or maybe many of them are on the live stream trying to see that. I'm actually running the live stream from my Sprint phone. So if it works, Sprint gets a really big plus on that. Well, hopefully it will. I'm not using the Wi-Fi today, so hopefully we won't crash like we did last time. It's awesome to have that problem though, right? So many people. Yeah, I agree. So I am so excited about this morning's program because in social media, the one thing that you can learn is you can't do it alone, ever. Nothing that you do in social media will you do by yourself. You can't take credit for anything without a community. So what I did is I invited these lovely two ladies here to talk to you a little bit about how exactly they're doing that. So I'm going to just not read their whole bio, but you can look here and see their social media if you want to like tag them. And you can also see it online. I'm sure some of you that are closer, if you could go ahead and tweet it out so other people can see it too. But what I have here is Lisa Stauber on the far left, and Lisa is an amazing entrepreneur, I would say, with lots of kids, and she's like amazing that way. I mean, she can do everything. She can do everything. She is like, you know, running a household, running a business, and also running an amazing conference once a year that is coming up. And I'll let her talk a little bit about that, which I hope you guys will come, and I'm sure she'll give us a code, right? Of some kind. Right now you can get it for that anyway, so just go do it. But anyway, Lisa is the founder of Blog Elevated, and this is a conference that brings local and national brands together to work with bloggers, lifestyle, usually bloggers, but also all kinds of bloggers. And she has amazing content during that Blog Elevated conference where she's kind of like this content, you know, stuff that you can use. I mean, I've been to it twice now. You've had it only twice, right? Right. So they're coming up on their third year. I've been to both, and every single time I like take pages of notes. And you know, I you know a little bit about social media, so I'm just like, wow. There was somebody there talking about how she succeeds on YouTube. I mean, that to me was amazing. I mean, in that session, I just took pages of notes because YouTube is sort of an enigma unless you're on YouTube regularly, right? And so that's great. Besides watching videos, I mean, putting your own videos on and making them go somewhere. Also, here's Crystal Howard. She's with Kroger, and she runs the social media for Kroger in several regions, Texas being one of them. And so she's doing some great work around. And she's done some work with Blog Elevated, which is why we have them here, because they have had an affiliate partnership, or a partnership, if you will. And we're going to talk a little bit about those partnerships. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start asking some questions and kind of getting started. So could you tell me at first a little bit, Lisa, kind of how you find brands and what you look for in brands when you're looking for partnerships with brands? With Blog Elevated, we really look for brands that value bloggers. There are a lot of brands that see bloggers kind of as a disposable commodity, and we want to work with brands who see our value, know our value, so we can give them value so everybody wins that way. Great. And you're going to have to share the mic. So, yeah, okay. Sorry, don't have three, I have two. So can you tell me, Crystal, like what you look for when you're trying to put together a partnership as a brand, going out, looking for partnerships? What are you looking for?
You know, to give a little more background, so I've been with Kroger for 5 years, and in that time, social media has become one of my responsibilities. And I've known Lisa now for a number of years, but I always like to position Kroger as a luxury brand that's relevant to every single person in this room. We all grocery shop. It's just a matter of where you choose to grocery shop. So it's my job to make you want to choose Kroger. And being a large corporation based in Cincinnati, many people don't realize how large we are. We have 2,600 stores spread across 34 states and DC. So if you take it from the corporate standpoint, a large part of my responsibility is making that local, making it personal. And we've been able to do that and make that bridge by partnering with local bloggers and influencers and conferences such as Blog Elevated. So that piece of our business is very important. It's part of our marketing mix and part of that omni-channel presence that we have, from digital to print to social to all those elements. It makes up that marketing mix.
And I think that's a great point you're making, that social media and those partnerships should also support the entire communications process. So what would you say to people here that, I mean, let me just handle this right up front, who say, well, you're Kroger, you're kind of a big brand, you have a lot of money, you have a lot of like resources. So kind of explain, you know, how does this relevant for somebody who has less than that?
Yeah, so sure. So just to give you some insight, again, speaking to the volume and the magnitude of our company, again, 5 years ago, we weren't engaged in Facebook. We weren't engaged in water relations. I was here on the ground, right, setting up Google alerts, following individuals and groups on Twitter. So from the ground up. So I think so many times you think of a corporation, you think of them having so many resources and being so progressive in advance, but oftentimes being in a corporation that large creates so many different barriers. And I'm fortunate that I do have the autonomy and the liberty at ground level to create initiatives. And that's exactly it. I kind of took the bull by the horns and said that this is a space, these are people that we need to be in front of, these influencers who are talking to our customers in an authentic voice. And I created the events. I created those partnerships from the ground up, and it wasn't any direction that I received from corporate level. It was me taking the initiative and seeking out those partnerships.
Great. So here's somebody who's bootstrapped it from the bottom. So I just want you to know that what you hear today is not just some, you know, glossy like PR, you know, agency kind of talk. So Lisa, could you tell us a little bit about like what brands should be looking for, or companies or organizations or even smaller organizations should be looking for in working with influencers? What do they expect from companies and brands to do that? That's a huge question. That could be an hour-long answer. But really, I think the core of what brands need to look for when looking for bloggers is just the relationships between the brand and the bloggers, and also the bloggers and their readers. What you're going to want to look for are bloggers that are engaged with their readers, that are very authentic, very transparent, because then it becomes a friend telling a friend something over the backyard fence. It's not marketing, it's not a sales pitch. It's a, hey, I found this out, or hey, I like this brand, and it's friend to friend. And that's really the strength that bloggers have, is we have those personal type relationships with readers. Even though we've never met, they trust us just like they would trust their aunt or their sister or their mom. Before you go on, how do you find trustworthy bloggers? I mean, there's some that seem to just have, you know, sponsored posts, and, you know, they just have a bunch of, I don't know. Yeah, I know what you mean. To really find the authentic bloggers is look for the people who are telling stories. Look for the people who are interacting and engaged with their readers. Look for the people whose readers are super fans of them. There's hardly any websites that people are super fans of that are just sponsored posts or product review after product review. And people will tell you if you have that personal touch. And then the second best way really to find bloggers is to ask other bloggers, because we know blogging and we know those people that are just a PR machine, just a product review machine, versus the people who are truly engaged with their community, serve their readers, and really bring that personal value. That is why you hire bloggers as influencers to begin with. So you said a big word there, and I'm going to have Crystal answer this, but it's hire bloggers. So could you talk a little bit, Crystal, about how you work with bloggers? I mean, do you hire them, or do you work? I mean, what do you offer? What can you offer to these?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. There are many different angles and avenues, and I quickly want to go back to your piece of how do you find the blogger. So she's getting from the lens as an influencer herself, but as a brand, like I said, when I started 5 or 6 years ago, it was the Google searches, it was the Google alerts, it was kind of combing through Twitter and following kind of what are those hot hashtags, where are those groups. And I think it's so important, whether you're a publicist or a marketer or whatever function you play, is to get out and go meet the people. So I don't know if you mentioned, but Lisa, among many things, is also the founder of Houston Bloggers, which is a bloggers organization that meets in person once a month. Yeah. And it was important to me several years ago. As I look at Amy, we were kind of catching up. Yes, you, Amy. We were catching up, but we met in person at one of those events. Again, I took the initiative to go to that event to meet these people in person. I think it's important to get from behind the computer screen, the tablet, to actually go put a face to the name, to the avatar, to the brand. I think that's so important. I treat these relationships with the influencers just like I do members of the media. If I was working with a Chronicle reporter or someone from Culture Map, Houssonia, I hold them to that same level and standard. And there have been instances, a few, where, you know what, I encountered someone who wasn't professional, and it was more of just a personal hobby, because there's a difference between it being a business and a hobby. I seek to partner with those who this is a business, if they're a professional, right? They have that engaged audience. They know how to manipulate the content to get the word out through multiple platforms and their authentic voice and their own lens. So again, there's a difference between a professional influencer and someone who just periodically likes to write about shopping, right? So those are two different things. So kind of going back to the piece of how do we work with influencers and bloggers? There are different things. When we first started out, and there are, a couple of people in this room, Bobby and Lisa and others that I see here, who attended our Vibes. So Vibes standing acronym for very important blogger events, right? So as I mentioned to you guys, we created an event. It wasn't this corporate program that came down from a fancy glossy agency. It was something here on the ground. We created these Vibe events in which we would invite kind of 10 to 12 influencers into one of our stores for like an intimate one-on-one. Oftentimes it's maybe tied to a store opening, or it could just be kind of a night on the town on Kroger. We would invite them to the store, give a behind the scenes tour, kind of a personal Q&A, ask anything that you want, right? Because when you think of grocery, you just think of buying the bananas and the cereal. But how often is it that you get to speak with the person who actually does the buying for our meat department or for our dairy department? So it's just an all-inclusive special access event. There are times that we've done things at the Dynamo Stadium, like bring you and your family out on us, as we're sponsored with the Dynamo the Texans. So again, leveraging those partnerships, conferences, if we're, gift card giveaways, there's just so many different angles that we've taken.
Right. And so do you I didn't ask you this before, but do you guys do recipe development and that kind of stuff with bloggers ever?
So, and that's exactly it. So as we are looking at, growing our Pinterest following, we're a little behind on the times as large as we are. You think that we would be light years ahead, but we're just slowly entering into that space. So absolutely, there are times when, for instance, our new Simple Truth line and private selection, when we are looking for bloggers who really are strong in that Pinterest space and recipe development space. So that's who I'm going to seek out and form that partnership with. So yes, there are times.
And with those people, you would probably pay them, right?
Correct. So there are different things, right? And I know we always have this conversation that compensation payment can come in many forms. So at the Vibe events, it was a great gift bag filled with exclusive new products that we launched, gift cards, other things, right? There are times that there is a payment involved. And again, being strategic about who we're aligning with. So I'm not just writing the check to everyone that I work with. It's a matter of what are they bringing to the table. It's something that's mutually beneficial, but also compensation comes from the form of maybe there's a trip involved. Maybe there's a gift card involved. It always doesn't necessarily have to be kind of a handwritten check and here you go, thanks for your service. There are different forms of payment. And you can speak to that as well.
Could you follow that up a little bit, Lisa? I think, again, everything goes back to relationship and compensation. Crystal's so right. Compensation doesn't necessarily mean a check. Bloggers are professionals and we provide a professional service, so payment is not out of the question, but there are so many other ways that people can work together and compensate, whether it's that behind the scenes access, that exclusive event, sometimes it's product, sometimes it's having access to new things so that we can give value to our readers by always being on top of whatever the latest item is or the latest policy is. So there's a lot of ways that people can work together without there being checks. But that being said, you can't ask for a favor from somebody that's not your friend. So yeah, so if you really don't have a budget for bloggers, then you need to really invest the time in those personal relationships, because we're not going to post a press release verbatim for somebody that is a stranger that shows up in our inbox. But you know what? I'll retweet something for a friend. I'll post something on Facebook because I value my relationship with Crystal and she asked me to, and we have that personal relationship going. Right, and one of the things that I think is, and the reason I started with kind of blogger relationships and this whole thing about alliances is also this idea of scaling. So, how many lunches can you have with one person? How many friends can you actually have online, right? I think all of us are struggling with that on social media in general, so how many friends do we have? So tell me a little bit, Crystal, about how alliances, like the Blog Elevated one, and we'll talk about a couple of other alliances. That there's one that actually I'm attending next week, oddly, completely unrelated to this. So this whole alliance thing. So kind of how are you scaling with alliances like Blog Elevated?
Yeah, sure. So I think, and kind of backing it up from an alliance standpoint, as we're having this conversation and dialogue, it's so important to have a plan put together. So it's not just gonna, I think, next week, let's do this. There's a strategy behind it all, again, as it's part of our overall marketing mix, communications mix. This is something that I map out from a 12-month perspective. It's important to have that vision and create those tactics that will bring that vision to life. As you talked about alliances, I'm very strategic. I do have a set-aside budget for these types of programs and initiatives. And it's not this astronomical figure that you guys may be thinking, but again, I'm very responsible with those dollars and how I invest those dollars. And I want to make sure that I'm getting the most return on those dollars when I am spending them. So for instance, as you talk about alliances, Kroger in the Texas market, so I represent the Southwest Division, which is Texas and Louisiana, 215 stores. We're opening 11 stores this year. We're actually opening one right now. It's happening in the Dallas area. So again, my goal, and I communicated with our executives, is to align with one influencer per opening that resides really within kind of that 5 to 10 mile radius of that store that understands that neighborhood. So once again, that being a twofer is that they have that online influence, that digital influence, but then they also, these are the people that their parents, their children go to the same school. They have that same network. They're at the same movie theater, right? So it's important that someone who understands that region where we're opening a store. But it's important to me from an alliance standpoint that I'm seeing this group at least 2 to 3 times a year in person. So whether it's partnering with Lisa for Blog Elevated, our initiative that I know you're going to talk about, that we're partnering with Houston Community College, as I look at Nell. Hey, Nell. It's just important to me that I have these touch points in person at least 2 to 3 times a year. But going back to that piece of our store opening, so I'm going to have 12 touch points, 12 different alliances, just 11 different alliances with the store that we're opening this year.
So yeah, I mean, I think that's a really interesting thing you're saying. I mean, for you, it's all about location. For other people in the room here, it may be about topic or about interest area. It may not have anything to do with location. So finding those influencers that kind of reside in that circle of influence, if you will, that you're looking to get to. That's a really powerful thing. And so finding those alliances, let's talk a little bit about Houston Community College now. So hey, so I guess a week and a half ago, 2 weeks. I got a pitch because I live within, about a mile of a store that is in Katy, and I'm part of KDIC, and there's going to be a conversation at the store. So can you explain this whole Houston Community College thing, how it came about, what that's about? Why are you supporting that?
Yeah, so background. So I've known Nell for several years now, and she's the PR director for HCC, and she reached out and she was like, hey, we have this vision. We want to put together this event for influencers in the Katy area related to education, of course. And she's like, is there a way for Kroger to get involved? We're thinking about having this at a restaurant. And I was like, no restaurant needs to be involved in this. Come to one of our stores that's there in Katy. Let's plan this out. Let's have us host you guys at our store. Our store can be the backdrop. We'll provide the food, the beverages. You guys bring the speakers. You guys manage reaching out to the influencers to the event. But it's exactly that. It's leveraging some things that are already existing. So a partnership with HCC, partnership with Blog Elevated, existing conferences and conversations that are happening, just with the opportunity to leverage that. And once again, that's that traffic driving pieces. I'm in retail, I'm in sales. It's all about continuously driving traffic to a store. So that's kind of my lens of when I look at these things, is how can we always ultimately, my job is to get people into the store and to produce a sale.
Right, and I thought it was I think it's kind of mutually beneficial too for each party, which is really important because Houston Community College, for example, they're going to have all these influencers come in. We're going to have a conversation, and then they're going to film it. We have to sign releases, and they're going to use it as advertising around their issues. So I think that's a really powerful, double use for this. I mean, that doesn't really, that's great for them and great for you.
No, absolutely. Again, going back to that strategy and the alignment, education is one of our community pillars. So again, it brings all of those channels back together.
Oh yeah, so this is your corporate social responsibility is education. So there you go. So Lisa, I know you do a similar thing with Blog Elevated when you're picking alliance partners for that. Could you talk a little bit about that and sort of like what brands or people that are looking to do alliances should think about whenever they're thinking about partnering with somebody like Blog Elevated or any organization? I think the first thing, again, and I know I'm kind of harping on the same thing, but it goes back to relationships. And so you want to look at, as Blog Elevated, what relationship do we have with our bloggers and who are our bloggers? Or any conference, who are the attendees and who do they have relationships with, and how can you leverage those attendees and who they're connected with to further your brand? Because not every conference is going to be right for every person, but the perfect conference can really give you a huge return on your investment if you pick the right conference or the right event that has the right people there. So you always have to be looking at people first, and remember that we all have other connections. So who can you reach through us is what you really need to be looking at. That's great. Yeah, those are really good points you're making there. So along that line, could you talk a little bit about can you give some examples of some of that, like maybe even different brands than Kroger, but how brands are doing a really good job with that? Do you have some in mind?
Blog Elevated?
Yeah, you can use Blog. I mean, they're the ones you know. So sure. Okay, so Kroger has been a long-time sponsor of Blog Elevated, but we've also had another sponsor, Imperial Sugar, which is a local company, and they've been with Blog Elevated from the very beginning too. So our attendees tend to be 90% women, 10% men. They tend to be educated with children, and a lot of our bloggers, their niche is home life, home lifestyle, parenting, and food. So that's a natural fit for Imperial Sugar. So when they come to our event, they already know that our attendees are connected to everybody that's going to be their customers. So they come to our event and they know there's going to be food bloggers there that they can talk to about recipe development. They know that we have moms there that they can talk to about posting lifestyle things that involve the Imperial Sugar brand. Last year, they didn't even do a food. They did a homemade beauty product, which is another kind of parenting mom lifestyle thing that moms can do with their daughters, or that you can just whip up at home real quick where you don't have to go out to a spa. And they know that our attendees, most of our attendees, are their perfect demographic, and so therefore they're connected to the rest of their perfect demographic. I loved my sugar scrub.
Yeah.
I just used the last of it actually last weekend. I know. It was good. I wanted to eat it. It was, yeah. Unfortunately, I had to keep it away from my 6-year-old. What is that, Mom? So yeah, I think that's a really good kind of look into that. One of the things we were talking about personal relationships. That's okay. I'll need it. Is how these kind of impact you going on. So I don't know how many of you know Vaughn Crowder. She actually has a blog in town called Math 4, that's math. Yeah. Sorry, math. She's Math 4, and it's That's Math. Her blog is math4.com, and her nonprofit is called That's Math. Right. So sorry, I didn't mean to get them all scrambled, but she's right now doing a beta test of a really cool product that she's putting together, where she's going to SMS text parents phrases that they can use with their kids every day to teach them math concepts, like in a really cool way, without being too, read this flashcard, kind of thing. So I was really fortunate to be on the beta for that test, and she sent me one that I had to read here today because Vaughn has come to many events. So could you talk a little bit about your relationship with Vaughn and how you met her?
Yeah, sure. I had to look back at this picture just to make sure that she wasn't included, because that was the first year of Blog Elevated. Yeah. And last minute, I challenged the group to, okay, if anyone can put together a dress made of Kroger bags, you'll be up for a chance to win a gift card. So a handful of people were crazy enough to actually do it, and I was like, oh, wow, that's what we did. Like you can do with a plastic bag. But I met Vaughn, and I'm going back to, it was at the same event that I met Amy in the Montrose area at the French restaurant when I came to speak and meet with that group. So it just goes back to the importance of meeting folks in person. And again, I see Vaughn a couple of times a year.
So if anybody's here from HEB, I apologize to you, but you weren't at that meeting. So this is where you lost. If we go to Kroger to get groceries, then we don't have to go to HEB. That's an if-then statement.
I like it.
So I was like, when I read this, I was like, that just is a perfect example of like how that relationship has worn itself out through like an entire, kind of boiled down to the bottom. So the kind of relationships you have, you never know where you're going to get the benefit necessarily, right? So can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, and I agree. And just think of it as expanding your professional and personal network, because now I have friends, influencers who now send me opportunities. They're like, hey, Crystal, just want to make sure you saw this, or wanted to make sure that you're aware of this partnership opportunity. It may not even be related to them, right? But they realize it's related to food and to grocery. So it's just think of it as expanding your network. And one thing that I want to touch on as you're speaking to some of the other brands involved in Blog Elevated. Again, realizing that all of you guys don't work for grocery stores and manufacturers, but also think about who do you work with, what are some of the other business units you work with, because oftentimes they want to get in front of this audience, but they don't know how. So one of our vendors, very large vendor, Procter & Gamble, who is the brand behind CoverGirl and a slew of other things, Pantene, I reached out to them and said, I have a very unique opportunity for you, knowing that from a beauty brand perspective, and knowing, again, going back to that 90% being women, I was like, how would you like to align with us, Kroger, right? Pass through. So free sponsorship to you, right? You can come on board, pass through, right? And we can host this magnificent beauty event at Blog Elevated. So we named it Beauty Bubbles and Bites. So it was the Friday evening of Blog Elevated, which was in Galveston last year. And it was such a unique concept that they once again have resources. So they have a traveling team of makeup artists and hairstylists, and they do these pop-up events. I was like, okay, how can we leverage that at Blog Elevated? So ultimately we turned this conference space into a salon and spa at this event. So again, it leveraged, they brought all of those resources to the table, got their brand, their visibility out there, and it was a big win. We got the credit for it as well. We did a hashtag #BeGlam selfie event, and once again, it's just everyone's engaged, it's on trend, it's on topic, it's reaching that right people. But there have also been other times where I've leveraged the relationships that we have with our wine suppliers and beer suppliers and cheese and meat suppliers to have them come out and sample food at those events. So again, I'm not cutting the check for, I'm not having to write off a check for the beverages and the food. They're bringing that to the table, and I'm giving them pass-throughs to reach this audience of people.
Yeah, that's a very, very good example. And so it kind of brings me to the next question, which I think is also an important one. How do you measure the success of these programs? I mean, how do you know what you're doing is moving the needle?
Yeah, so there are a few things, and I think of the, post-event report that you guys provided with, thank you, Bobby.
Bobby Bird.
Yeah. Just a different metrics and impressions, and they drilled it down all the way to the point of this was the reach of tweets and posts, whether on Instagram and Twitter, that mentioned Kroger, had a picture that featured the Kroger logo or item. So they wrote it down to the point, like these were all of the conversations about your brand. And it was such a great report, and we were, 1 million plus. It was something, I don't have those stats right in front of me, but it was impressive. So once again, that report, that easy to read visual simulating report, I was then able to forward that to our marketing executives, our president, to say, look, and this is why this is important. And even our corporate office, our digital team, to go, look at what we're doing. And also, they're oftentimes a custom coupon for these events, right? Because that's a clear way, that barcode that you can see what are your redemption rates and sets. There was a coupon that I issued at Blog Elevated in 2014 that actually saw a 50% redemption rate. And if you know anything about coupon offers and redemptions, on average, and industry average, it's a 7 to 12% redemption rate. That saw a 50% redemption rate. So could I absolutely go to our marketing team, our loyalty business unit, and go, this is the right audience. This is who we need to talk to and talk to more of. So it's just kind of that driver.
Yeah, and from the influencer / kind of conference point of view, how do you show your value? And then this is one way, but like, how does even like the average blogger show their value to a brand? A lot of bloggers will provide statistics and numbers, but numbers can be fudged and followers can be bought. So you really have to, let's be honest, people buy followers. I don't know why, but they do. So again, you have to go down to that engagement level and look at people who are commenting, the people who are retweeting. Who are they and what value added are they adding? Are they just retweeting? Are they adding a comment with the retweet? And who are those people's networks? And then as bloggers, another thing we do, we send brands not only our numbers, but we also send them our influence. So we can say, okay, we have so many Pinterest followers, but we can also say, and we've had 1,500 pins on our recipe featuring butter, or we've had 1,750 favorites of our tweet of our whatever craft it was with the popsicle sticks at Easter time, or whatever. So we can show that people are not just consuming our content, but that they're actively sharing. So that's one thing I would ask for when you're looking to work with bloggers, is see not only who's just taking their content in, but when they want to share it with all their friends and all their family and on Facebook, you really start seeing that kind of social networking going on. That's when you know you have the right for your campaign.
Yeah, and I use True Social Metrics to do some of that. They show engagement rates across all the different levels. I love that. I'll look at a blogger in True Social Metrics and say, yeah, you may have 40,000 Twitter followers, but your engagement is like a zero. So I'm like, you bought those followers, didn't you?
Yeah, we've all seen that person that has 15,000 Instagram followers and like 2 hearts. And it's a picture of their kids, or East basket or something that everybody, how can you not like it, or their dog or something?
Yeah, it's like a cat doing an acrobatic move, and there's like 1 like. Yeah, it's like, no. So I think measurement is an important part of it, and I think this with strategy. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, have you gotten more support from corporate because of these things, and kind of talk a little bit about how you manage that corporate?
Yeah,
I started with that, but
and
a little more.
It's been a slow build over the past 5 years. I can think of many presentations that I have been to our leadership group, our executive group, and it's like, they're like, what are you talking about? Why are you doing this? You're crazy. But okay, whatever. But it's interesting. So about 2 years ago, I was recruited by our corporate team to I was part of our social media committee for the company across the nation. So I was one of a handful of people, 5 people who were selected from different pockets of our business to be part of the strategy development. And so it's interesting. So again, this was 2 years ago. 2, not 5, not 10 years ago. This was 2 years ago that we had a strategy development meeting for social media marketing. So I would fly up to Cincinnati quite frequently and be on obnoxious, conference calls. You know how that goes. But it was like, why are we doing this? What's the why behind it? So I think as you're building your plans, you have to be able to clearly spell, why are we doing this? Why are we investing time and money into this piece to be able to sell that? So I was able to continuously sell that story and back it up with results and back it up with the visuals and the engagement and the activities to get that buy-in and to get that support. So now it's just a way of life. But again, the strategy development is important, and the why. One thing that we're on the brink of as a company is enhancing and refining our social listening tool, right? Because we want to use this as a mechanism, because what we do, we view it as everyday focus group. Because behind that screen, people will tell you any and everything. They'll be like, oh, those bananas, they looked horrible today. And it's like, but it's an everyday focus group, but they'll tell you how great you are, right? So it's the everyday, but how can we now use all of that data, all of that insight? Or if someone's like, oh my God, I forgot to put in an order for a cake for my kid's birthday. Oh my God, I'm the worst mom in the world, right? But if we can hear that, and then we can chime into that conversation, how powerful is that from a relationship building standpoint, from a sales standpoint? So that's kind of the next chapter for us as a company, is to be more plugged in to the conversations, but making use of that data and insights, because just as all of us, it's just kind of there and exploding, and it's like, okay, but now what do you do? How do you integrate this data and insight and commentary? How do you make that tangible and functional, and how do you add that into your overall business operations so that you're leveraging the power of that to make business decisions?
Yeah, and I think that's something that many people and many organizations don't do, because it's hard. I mean, you have to work at it. It takes a little bit of effort to pull it together. So how are you kind of doing that? You picked a tool, and
We have. So I will say once again, I'm strategy development. So on the back end, of course, we have our team at work in Cincinnati. So I can't speak to, I think I know they were looking at one tool, Sprinkler was one tool that they were looking at, but we have an entire team devoted to that back end piece. And once again, integrating, closing those channels, right? So we have the mobile app, we have the website, we have the in-store piece, but how can we bring all of these elements together? So I'm just excited for where we're going over the next 48 months.
That sounds amazing. So we'll have to have you back and hear about that. So I would like to actually open it up to questions, because I can ask a million. I have a million more. But does somebody have any questions about how you can get into an alliance? You have one? I hear you kind of.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. Have you considered Twitter chats?
Yeah.
Twitter chats?
Yeah.
He asked if they've considered Twitter chats.
We have been involved. I haven't directly sponsored a Twitter chat, but I think of what you do every Tuesday night that I'll get engaged in and I'll hop in. But we as a brand, as Kroger, we haven't been directly involved in the Twitter chat, at least from a local
Why don't
perspective.
you talk about Twitter? Lisa, you talk a little bit about Twitter chats and explain the power of the Twitter chat.
Okay, so Blog Elevated has a chat every Tuesday night. Again, it goes right back to relationships. That's really what we stand for. So it's a way of checking in with our community once a week, helping them, giving them actionable advice to help them blog better. Our tagline for Blog Elevated is we help bloggers blog better and help them take their blog to the next level. So we use this Twitter chat. Our hashtag is Blog Elevated. If you want to look at the hashtag and scroll back through some of our old Twitter chats, we chat at the same time every Tuesday night, 9 p.m., which is after bedtime. Again, 90% of our attendees are women, so we chose our chat time to cater to them. And even though we talk about more social media or business type things, there are a lot of takeaways from our chat that are applicable to brands. For example, 3 weeks ago, we had a Twitter chat with Rafflecopter, which have you ever used Rafflecopter? They do contests and you can use them to have entries on Facebook and integrate in your social media. So we had a Twitter chat with the CEO of Rafflecopter, and just an hour just talking about how to have a contest, how to enter a contest, how to not make an annoying contest. We had 31 million impressions in 1 hour.
So to be legal with the contest?
Yeah, that was a big one, because we also stand for ethics and integrity and not, staying legal, stay above the board. So 31 million impressions during that Twitter chat for Rafflecopter, and it was targeted towards bloggers and influencers, which is exactly who Rafflecopter's audience is. But that's the power of the Twitter chat. We typically, on a chat that has no prizes, no incentives, no giveaways, we'll have between 4 and 8 million impressions just in 1 hour of a chat, because people know what to expect and they know they're going to get value from our chat, and they know it's not a sales pitch. So even when we have people, we've created a culture of that we are always giving value, and we're not just going to have somebody on board to sell to you. And so that's why people come. They know with us to know that we're going to give them value and it's not going to waste their time.
Any other questions? Oh, come on, people. You guys are chatty around here. Yeah.
So as a large corporation like Kroger's, how have you used social media for like B2B communication, and what kind of steps do you take to initiate that conversation like before?
Yeah, so sure. So I think it's interesting you mentioned B2B. 97% of what I do is business to consumer, B2C. So I'm tasked with talking to our customers, our shoppers, that group. From a B2B perspective, again, talking to suppliers and vendors, it's not really done through the social channels, just to be very frank with you. So really my focus and my objective is speaking to customers, potential customers in that space, and less on the B2B side.
But you do use your suppliers for these events and things. So you do partner with your suppliers on a B2B level to bring.
So sure, so absolutely. So partnerships with them, right? Because sometimes they're like, how do I get into this space? So I make it easy for them. I provide them that bridge, that avenue to get in front of the consumers. But speaking, leveraging social to speak to our business partners and suppliers, we really don't see that in this world. But again, yes, we do partner with them for different initiatives to help raise their profile in that space.
And I think from a B2B perspective in alliances, you have to look at what's mutually beneficial for each organization. So if you're trying to reach architects, in an architectural world or something like that, then you're gonna want to look at the two different things. And you could give me an exact example and I could probably help you find a way. But the idea is to be very creative about how you can mutually benefit each other. Whether it's B2B, B2C, always B2P, which is business to people, right? So you got to look at how do you build your personal relationships. I think it still remains the same, the relationship part of it.
My name is Charlotte Campbell, and my question is, social media, even whether it's B2C or it's B2B, if people view it as it's valuable, but it's not valued, it's specifically in the C-suite. So what was the aha moment in the C-suite? What impactful moment do you remember or recall that they said, oh, okay, now we see why we do this?
I'll tell you, one of my gifts is storytelling. I think storytelling is such a lost art form. It's knowing how to package it, right? And it's explaining the why, and here are the results of the visuals, and not this overwhelming 72-page report, right? No one looks at that, right? It's the quick bullets, the highlights, this was our reach, this was the impact, this was the result, this is what we did. But it's knowing how to, again, giving them the relevant information to tell that story, why this is important, and bridging that to your overall business goals. So it's always important to me, as I was going back to partnering with bloggers for our store openings, by partnering with them, right, spelling out the A to B to C equals this. By partnering with them, we're going to raise visibility of the opening, which will draw traffic to the store, which will drive sales. So it's learning how to put all those pieces together and telling that story to get that buy-in, and continuously telling that story. And guess what? Invite them to come out to these events.
Yeah, I think a personal look at things makes them really get it. But yeah, for C-suite, and I was just saying for the people in the Google chat, she was talking about how you get to the C-suite for that, and that's really it. Your business goals are so important.
And you know what? And I'm sorry, can I add on real quick before I lose that thought? So it's interesting. Right before Blog Elevated, so that was in September. It was a couple of days, and I was spending some time with our VP of operations. She's like, so I hear there's this blogger thing that's happening. What's going on? And I was like, and the way that I explained it to her, we were actually in one of our stores for a remodel that had just completed. I was like, imagine taking 250 shoppers, customers, and inviting them into your home and inviting them over for dinner. Imagine that intimacy, that one-on-one time, and how powerful that is. And she was like, that is powerful, right? So it's just, once again, learning how to describe and how to position this. But that was her aha moment. She was like, wow, that's powerful.
I like the storytelling part of it. You do a lot of really good storytelling kind of things too. So I think storytelling is important, right?
Yeah, storytelling is kind of my baby. I fell into blogging. I was a script writer, script editor, and wrote short stories. And I actually started my first blog so I could get free movie passes to movies before they came out. True story. So that was my first blog, was all about reviewing these movies. And so I think the power of the story is the power to connect to people. And when you can tell a great story and you connect to them on that emotional level, then everything else kind of sorts itself out. They want to help you. They want to be a part of whatever you're doing. When you connect to them heart to heart, which is storytelling is what it does, whether it's funny, whether it's tragic, whether it's moving, whether it's just heartwarming. I can't overestimate the importance of story. So here's a question in the corner.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Gretchen. Just sort of a follow-up to the C-suite question. So it seems like there's been an evolution that now on talking about reach, talking about impression, is almost enough. And talking about the dinner party and all of the audience, as opposed to show us the bottom line, show us the dollar. It sounds like there's been an evolution in the impression of what the value is. It isn't a dollar number.
So she was saying that it seems that the C-suite is accepting reach and that kind of thing instead of just dollar figures bottom line. So what's your response to that?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting, and I'll speak specifically to Texas and just our commercial real estate market and of course residential, the whole nine. But Texas as a whole is has a very competitive grocery landscape. So I'm very fortunate to work for one of our regions that sees that level of activity and competition, because my C-suite is so supportive, because they're like, what is that point of difference? What are other ways beyond the commercial, beyond the billboard, beyond the circular, right? Beyond the story in the Chronicle? How else can we reach people? How else can we tell that story? So I'm very fortunate to have that support and to be able to tell that story. And these are the ends where we connect with people here. Because again, every grocery store sells milk and eggs, but going back to that piece, what's gonna make you pass up a store that maybe is a mile closer to go to Kroger, right? To go to that store, and it's here. It's not right, because at the end of the day, you buy the same items at the same grocery store, everyone's gonna be just a few pennies off. That's just the reality of it. It's just advertised differently, but we all sell, it's all the same gist of it. But again, what is that point of difference? And it's the heart piece, and it's that emotional loyalty and that emotional connection. And you can do it in this space, and that's what I found, and that's how I've been able to get that buy.
But you also do connect it to the bottom line.
Oh, yes. So bottom line, and again, and it's going back to that coupon metric, and it's going back to, showing them this crazy picture of this person in a Kroger bag dress. It's, traditional advertising doesn't allow the creativity in that space, but this space does. So once again, putting that as part of the story, and this is enhancing and supplementing what we're doing from a traditional standpoint, has been able to kind of give me some leverage and pull in that space.
That's great, sir.
Yeah, I have a blog in Katy that's picking up some steam. It's called Covering Katy.
And Nell.
Me. Talk to me. I live there too.
And it's basically an online newspaper, but it's grown through social media. That's the only place I've advertised. And we have a team of people who are going to do videos, and I'm wondering how maybe videos could help out folks who want to be a sponsor of the site. It could help out a company like Kroger. Is that something you would value? Because I have a team of people. I worked in the video industry previous to this that just are chomping at the bit to start doing projects.
Yeah, so again, I wear many hats. So I'm also traditional media relations as well. So I'm everything. Like, what other question do you have? I can answer. But it's that hyper-local piece. So that is important to us, right? It's that hyper-local, you having a media company that's based in Katy. And I think that, we're about to, in a few months, in August, we're opening a new store in Katy. So it's like, let's talk.
Okay.
Yeah.
But now with video, the element
of
video
is important. It's like that visual element, sure. Right? It's like, in this instance, so I would work with you, right, to get you into the store in advance to do a preview tour. It's just a kind of tease, right? Your readership of look what's coming, look at what's opening on this particular date. So that video is important.
Okay.
Because it's visual, so yeah, it's very interesting. We'll talk afterwards.
Okay, good.
All right, yeah, good.
Have you considered, sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I was saying.
Sorry.
I have one more. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, so sure. So she just asked, do we monitor what our competitors are doing into the space? Kind of what are some of their initiatives and programs? Absolutely, we do. But we are confident in what we're presenting. And anytime that I am looking to, for instance, if I'm looking to align with the blogger for a store opening or for a product launch or for a product review, I'm going to vet them out. And once again, if they happen to be competitor loyal, that's probably not the person that I want to align with and partner with, or at different, conferences and alliances. I'm always aiming to get exclusivity. I'm not going to align with the conference unless I have grocer exclusivity in that space. I want to own that. I don't share that space at all. So those are certain things that I negotiate and I look for. So yes, we keep a pulse on them as with many other things. But again, I think our go-to-market strategy is so strong that we don't necessarily view that as a threat. We keep our pulse on what's happening, but again, I'm just so confident in the relationships that I've built that I know I've turned some people to Kroger loyal just from the relationships that I've built over those years.
Well, I think I might have time for one more question. Yeah.
When you say grocery specifically, can that be like drinks at a conference and maybe not the food? If like the food is sponsored by somebody else?
Yeah, so a few different things. It all depends on the angle, and like you said, I know Lisa and I have, oftentimes spoken about this. So when we have Procter and Gamble come on board with their beauty brands, it was like, that's it. No one else can come in on that space. So it varies, right? So it's, as long as it's not in direct competition with what we're doing, sometimes I'm open to that flexibility. But because again, we have beverages, we have food, we can supply all of those pieces. I really like to strive for exclusivity in a place, and want to position it as you can come to Kroger to get this product. And that's another thing. If you were able to purchase that product at Kroger, then it's like, yeah, we can have a conversation about that. But again, if it's only sold at another retailer, that would be a no.
Yeah, I also think it was interesting what you said, that even if you don't have another partner like Lisa, you can start your own event. I mean, you did some of your own events to start with. So Lizzie, you had to follow up.
I was just gonna add, it's important, again, those personal relationships to, if you want to get in on an event or a conference, you see that they have already had sponsors, maybe they have the same people come back year after year. Just have a conversation with them. And then we have a conversation with our sponsors to work it out, to see, is it something that can do, or how can we do it? For example, going back to Blog Elevated 2014, Procter & Gamble brought all of their beauty products, and we had an Instagram contest going and a hashtag and the big event, the Beauty Bubbles and Bites. But Imperial Sugar also wanted to do that spa-like sugar scrub. So I just talked to Crystal about it. She wasn't blindsided by all of a sudden people making their own beauty products on Thursday night, and then her party was on Friday night. We just had a conversation, and after we explained what they wanted to do, and she gave her feedback, then everything was fine. So I think the communication of what you want to do, and then allowing the organizers to talk to who they need to talk to, can go a really long way.
That's great. So could you guys give these ladies a hand for coming out and sharing all of this information? Really exciting. Yeah. Oh, you have one more thing to say?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have one more
Last
thing to
word.
Cammy asked me to write up 5 tips for working with bloggers
I
for
forgot to
brands.
do that.
So we have a printable on our website. It's blogelevated.com/brand-tips. So that should be easy to remember, and we're tweeting it out. If it hasn't tweeted out already, it's scheduled this week. A good timing for
You're
you.
so
So it's
perfect.
5 do's and the top 5 don'ts for working with bloggers. So if you want to take a look at that and then tweet us your thoughts, just use the hashtag and we'll connect.
Did you have your 5 tips since you were?
I do, but they're here. So you have to email me or find me on LinkedIn or find me
Or
on
you can
Twitter.
just, or you can
Or
say them.
invite me out to
Or
like lunch
say
or dinner.
Say them and they'll tweet you. Oh, that was really smart. I'll let them do that.
Take me out, I'll bring the printable with you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh my gosh. I should have thought of that. Anyway, great. So what I want to do really quick, as we always do, there's a bridal shower coming in up here, so I'm going to try to hurry up here. But what I want to do is ask if there's anybody here that has a job that's available, because we want to do our jobs thing real quick. Yes, come to the front, please. I did put up the jobs thing onto the Facebook page at facebook.com/Houston social media, and you will add it there too, right? Yes? Okay, she says maybe here.
So we have 2 job openings at MD Anderson in our communications office. The first one is not posted yet. It'll be posted in the next 2 weeks though. And both of these jobs